unhealthy individual. Also, you'll notice some of the blood cells, the membrane is very thickened and illuminated, and again that shows a sample that's not healthy, perhaps even a situation we could call over-proteinized. This particular individual has been diagnosed as being HIV positive, and so in this sample I would say we see a very extreme situation of ill health and of great need for some type of intervention. We're looking at a sample of blood taken from the same individual 1 month following a particular protocol. There are very significant and obvious differences between this blood and the blood that we saw in the previous sample. You'll notice how the red blood cells tend to have a better shape. There's less of the spiky cells and the misshapen cells referred to as echinocytes or schistocytes. And what we're seeing here is a much healthier individual or a person whose health has improved significantly with their protocol that they followed. So this is a significant improvement. An improvement that often takes a number of months to accomplish, but this has obviously been accomplished in a fairly short period of time.
About 5 years ago, I had a friend named Pat, and she had primary liver cancer, and she had asked for help. She had asked me about Hulda Clark and those kinds of things, and she had actually told me that she felt it was all parasite related. And the long and the short of the story is she had gone down to Mexico and spent $40,000, and her cancer was still there. I told her that I'd accidentally gotten a tape from a company that was telling about a device called a magnetic pulsar and another one. It was a blood electrification unit. And so I ordered them and sent them to her, and also some herbs from Hulda Clark. And the long and the short of the story is that her cancer stopped growing. And she's still, it's almost 5 years, I think 4 or 5 years, she's still alive today, alive and kicking. 3 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with colon cancer. It had gone into her lymph system. And I had been a little bit aware of these things because of helping Pat, so I started my mother on it. Then after that, I was diagnosed with 2 abnormal masses on my liver. My mother had just lost her sister and her mother to colon cancer to the liver. And so I didn't wait around to get the same diagnosis that my own mother had had and her sister and my grandmother. I was highly upset. You know, here I'd had everything here to use, but I wasn't really using it. So I started, and then I found out my adopted brother, who's not related to me at all other than by name because he's been adopted, he developed colon cancer as well. So we started him on the program, me on the program, and my mom on the program at the same time. And the program is basically doing Hulda Clark herbs, black walnut, whole tincture, extra strength, wormwood, and cloves, the combination, making huge lifestyle changes. And we were drinking colloidal silver, started wearing the blood electrification unit for a minimum of 2 hours a day without skipping. And that made sense. I thought, you know, it'll help clean and strengthen my immune system. Started using the something called a magnetic pulsar. It sends a magnetic pulse through your body, and I did that heavily on my liver for 3 weeks, a good couple of hours a day. A lot of crying. You know, you could tell I'm young. I didn't want to die yet, and I live in a nice place. Anyway, started drinking ozone water, freshly made. Started ozonating all my vegetables, anything that would go in my mouth. But after 3 weeks, I went in for a CAT scan, and there was nothing on my liver. And that's been over 2 years now. Or, yeah, July was 2 years. Since then, we are very careful about what we eat, what we touch, places we go. You know, if we eat out, we'll order something that they have to make fresh, not a burger or something that's been sitting for, you know, who knows how long. You do want to get a candy bar and those kinds of things. And honestly, I do cheat, you know, sometimes, but that is not my lifestyle. Now it's like when we were children, a candy was a snack, and nowadays a candy or junk food becomes your staple. You can't live like that any longer.
I've had clients who have cancer, and sometimes they will use the magnetic pulsar over the tumor, and we've seen cases where there is tumor shrinkage by medical measurements after using the pulsar. I mean, obvious shrinkage, 15% in 2 weeks, for example.
I was diagnosed in 1987 with chronic fatigue syndrome. I was put on a course of natural products, including vitamin C and different amino acids, some of which helped. I was also put on prescription medication, all of which came together to help with slight increments of improvement. It never completely eradicated the symptoms, and those symptoms include extreme muscle weakness, a lot of flu-like symptoms, fevers, sweats, overall muscle weakness, nausea, but particularly debilitating for me was headaches. Migraine-level headaches, but not technically migraine. The other thing is, symptom-wise, is cognitive things, short-term memory, ability to concentrate. I would forget where my car was parked. Well, about 1.5 years ago, I met a nurse practitioner who had symptoms of fibromyalgia. She was very, very ill and was about to have to quit work because of her symptoms. I encountered her a few months later, at which point she seemed very healthy and active, and she told me that she had implemented the Beck protocol and that she was completely off medication and back to work and much improved. So in February of this year, I purchased the equipment, the Beck machine to use on my wrist, as well as the magnetic pulsar, the cloves, the wormwood herbs, and used the Beck machine also to make my own colloidal silver water. I had been feeling very, very healthy and active, and a lot of my concentration, my cognitive things were better as a result of the program. I began to experience the headache again. One day, the weakness in my legs and arms, a little bit of nausea. It occurred to me I hadn't worn the Beck machine on my wrist for probably 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks probably. So I put it on. And within 30 minutes, it was so dramatic, very dramatic, that my headache was gone. It wasn't just subsiding, it was gone. And my energy level was back to normal. The weakness in my arms and legs was gone. And that was just after 30 minutes. I did wear it the rest of the day, that day, because clearly the virus was acting up for me to have those symptoms again. Now I use the machine on my wrist more often, at least once a week. I also use the magnetic pulsar on my bladder, or for my bladder, because I had cystitis, interstitial cystitis, which is supposedly a chronic, where I would constantly feel like I had a bladder infection, but there is no infection. Bladder is always irritated. It's very uncomfortable. And the magnetic pulsar completely eradicates those symptoms. I'm no longer on medication. I keep the headache and the other symptoms away using that, and that is very exciting to me. The magnetic pulsar also helps a great deal with the pain. I use it right on across my forehead and temples where the pain is most severe.
I went to Missouri on a trip there, and I contracted what's known as Lyme disease, and I didn't know it at the time that it was Lyme disease. But eventually I started feeling really sick. I started getting headaches all the time. I started feeling very tired, sore throats all the time. My joints ached. I was having a problem with eating. I couldn't eat. It would hurt to eat. So I kind of stopped eating, but I wasn't losing weight. I was actually, I felt like I was gaining weight from this. All I wanted to do was lay in my bedroom and just sleep all day long, and I didn't care about anything else. I was very depressed, and my mom, thank God she stepped in, because she's the one who noticed, and she says, "There's something wrong. I'm taking you to a doctor." Well, at the time I also had a bullseye rash on my wrist, and I didn't know that that was a sign of Lyme disease. When they took tests on me to try to figure out what was wrong, nothing came up. There was nothing wrong with me. And I had done this many times through many doctors. I could not get anyone to tell me what was wrong. In the end, what happened is I went on Rocephin for a month intravenously, and my doctor had told me, if nothing comes out of this, then we need to put you on some medication for depression. Well, after I had done this, my test was positive for Lyme. I was not crazy like I thought I was because I wasn't depressed, but I did have Lyme disease. My aunt, thank God, because it was all in his plan, she had gotten sent a brochure on the Beck protocol. So she told my mom, and my mom called me and said, I have the cure. So I was a little skeptical at first because I've never heard of this kind of treatment, I guess you could call it. But I said, what do I have to lose? My mom convinced me too. What do you have to lose? You've been on all these antibiotics. What do you have to lose? And I thought, you know, what do I have to lose? Nothing. I've been sick. I couldn't get any sicker. I was already sick enough. So I said, okay, let's try it. I stayed on my 2-hour. I stayed 2 hours for blood electrification. I was drinking my colloidal silver faithfully. I was doing my magnetic pulsing, and I noticed right away, doing that even, my joint pains went away, and it was unbelievable. I felt so much better. So I just started thinking that, you know, this might be it. This might be what will help me get through this Lyme disease. By Christmas time, this was from October to Christmas, I was feeling actually really, really well. I had energy. I felt good when I got up. My depression was slowly going away, so I felt so much better. I felt better about myself. I felt like I had at least a little energy to do something fun once in a while. After doing the Beck protocol for about a year, I was totally freed from a lot of the symptoms I had, from all the symptoms I had actually, and I felt 100% better. I could do so many things I had never been able to do within that time period that I was sick. And some exciting things that I remember getting was I bought a bicycle, and I started bicycling because I love to be outdoors and I love to do a lot of sports. And so I bought a bicycle, and for my first time to actually get out and ride my bicycle, I loved it. I couldn't believe it. And I love to hike, so we'd go up to the mountains and I would be hiking without getting tired. And so it was so nice to be able to do these things again.
Hello, my name is Paul, and I was born deaf. I grew up on a farm with a family of 5 brothers and sisters. I developed asthma because the farm is dusty, there's a lot of dirt, and I had problems breathing all my life. The worst time of the year was the fall. And I tried many different kinds of medicine. My family took me to many different doctors. They all tried to help, but they always offered me medicine, same old thing. Inhalers, and nose inhalers, pills. And I got tired of depending on medicine because they're chemicals and they always have side effects. I began using the blood electrification for about 3 hours a day. Then I started using the magnetic pulsar about a half hour every day, and I started drinking colloidal silver. About every few hours I would take a sip, and I continued doing that for about 3 or 4 months. Then I noticed that my asthma started to go away. I felt strong. I didn't have to worry about going into a house where people had animals. And then I started drinking ozonated water later because I wanted to keep my health strong. I couldn't go into a house if the people had had a cat or dogs because it would bother me. Now I can go into a home that has pets, and I'm surprised because I jump for joy. I'm so happy because now I don't have to limit myself, and I don't have to ask people, do you have animals?
Another client came from Arizona. She had originally colon cancer. The colon cancer metastasized to the pelvic bone. They did radiation, chemo, did not work. They ended up doing a full colostomy, which is cutting out that whole section of the colon. They couldn't even do a resection 3 months later, the cancer came back, a tumor in her rectum and tumors throughout her pelvic bone and 14 nodules in her lung. They sent her home with 2 weeks to live. This is what the doctor said. They said, you have 2 weeks to live. She did not want to die. I give her a program. I mean, they come, they spend about 3 hours when they're out of town, and I say, look, this is the protocols you have to do. Here's the telephone number. Buy your equipment. It's done experimentally. We give full consent, and we do informed consent, so they know it's experimental. But when you're given 2 weeks to live, what does it have to lose? Took her